Recently, I've made some big changes to my US stock portfolio. Today, I'll be talking about what I did, how I see my portfolio, and share some of the holdings that I currently have. Cha-ching! The first thing I did was that I moved a lot of my long-term investments to a new broker, being Interactive Brokers, and I did mention that in a previous video. While doing this entire process, I figured to myself that I needed a new investment strategy that better fits my style. To do this, I'm now using two different brokers to manage my portfolio, being Webull and Interactive Brokers. If you want to sign up for Interactive Brokers, use our link, we'll leave it down in the description below, and it really supports the channel. So let's get started with the problem that I faced. Why did all of this happen, and what was the main problem that made me want to rethink my entire investment portfolios? Basically, there were two things. Firstly, there were just so many great companies out there. I kept stumbling upon new ones, and then there's IPOs, there's SPACs and all that. And I just couldn't concentrate my portfolio enough as much as I wanted to. At times, I had more than 30 different stocks in my investment portfolio itself, and me being a savvy investor, I wanted to read the annual reports or the quarterly reports of every single one. Of course, with a full-time job, with YouTube as our side job, I just didn't have enough time to go through 30 plus quarterly reports every single quarter. It was obvious that it took too much time, I couldn't do it, and at times, I don't even remember why I invested in the company in the first place. On top of this, I realized that while some of the companies that I owned were very good fundamentally and the stock price was actually going up, the industry was just a bit too complex for me to understand, so I couldn't see the future very clearly and I couldn't see if a competitor would be better because I just don't know enough. With this in mind, how can I say that I would hold a stock for tens of years if first, I don't fully understand the industry, and second, I don't have enough time to do the research? The second reason why I decided to do this isn't really a problem, it's just that I really like looking at charts, and technical analysis is something that I really enjoy. I've been following lots of people who employ this trading strategy, they call it position trading, and it's something that really caught my eye. What they basically do is that they do trade in and out of positions, they don't hold it forever, but they also only trade companies that have very strong fundamentals. I'll show you guys what this means when I share my portfolio of this style later. So, combining these two problems together, I came up with the perfect solution. I'd have one portfolio that would hold all my long-term investments and I wouldn't be doing a lot of buying and selling. I won't really refer to charts, and even if the position was dropping, let's say the stock price is declining 10-20%, I would still hold on to these positions assuming my thesis is still intact. Also, I swapped out some of my very complex stocks with some ETFs instead. My second portfolio would be an entire different basket. It would be stocks that I used to like as well and even used to be in my long-term portfolio, except this time I won't be holding them for the long term. I will only be entering positions when the stock has momentum in terms of price, and I will exit it as soon as they lose this momentum. To do this, I have a whole watch list of stocks that I add and remove from time to time. I take a look at charts, technical analysis, but let me just talk about this later on. Now, I want to start off by showing my long-term portfolio. I want to remind all of you as a disclaimer that this is not financial advice. You guys shouldn't copy what I buy just because I do. Always do your own due diligence. Everyone has different views on stocks. So this portfolio I reserve for stocks and ETFs that I like for the very long term. These are the stocks and ETFs that, let's say, the stock market's completely shut down for 10 years, I wouldn't really mind owning them. And for this, I use my Interactive Brokers account. In total, I have 17 different holdings, 6 of them being ETFs and 11 of them being individual stocks. For stocks, starting off with the very largest names that I own, and they are Amazon, Facebook, Google, and Nvidia. These are basically the FANG names, but I did omit Apple, Microsoft, and Netflix. I just don't really like those names right now, and yeah, I'm just confident or more confident in these picks instead. I think that all 4 of these companies are great long-term, even though they're all really huge already, all of them trillion-dollar companies with the exception of Nvidia. But I do currently have some small doubts about Facebook because of how they use data and the potential of them being broken up in the future. My favorites from this bunch probably has to be Nvidia and Google. When we go one step down into companies that are not as big as those but still more than 100 billion market cap, then I have 3 names being Sea Limited, Square, and Shopify. These are, in my opinion, 3 of the very best stocks and are probably the core of my entire long-term portfolio. However, currently all of these names are trading at kinda high valuations. I think C Limited, Shopify especially, they got ahead of themselves a bit, but they're still great names. I'm just not adding a lot of money here. I want to see if maybe they might dip in the near future. Finally, I also have some sub 100 billion market cap companies. They are Mercado Libre, Roku, Teladoc, and Twilio. These are the 4 stocks that I think have a very good future ahead, but I will be closely monitoring the performance to make sure they execute well. And trust me, as soon as there are any signs that they are not doing well, I'll be cutting them off. Yes, this is a long-term portfolio, and yes, I did say that even if markets were closed for 10 years, I wouldn't mind. But there's a reason that these positions have a smaller allocation in my total portfolio, so that if anything happens, at least it's not too much money. Now, moving on to ETFs, I decided to go a bit more thematic rather than broad-based, so I don't own any S&P 500, I don't own any Nasdaq 100, QQQs, nothing like that. Starting off with my healthcare/genomics play, I of course have to own ARKG. This is the fund run and owned by Cathie Wood. Now, to be completely honest, I used to have some genomics-based stocks that I own, stuff like Twist Biosciences, Invitae, Ginkgo, but I realized that these are companies that I only understand from other people's convictions. To be honest, I will never properly understand genomics, and for that reason, I decided that I just cannot choose stocks in this industry, even though I think this industry will do well. So instead of holding these individual names, I'll just buy the ETF instead and trust Auntie Cathie to make the best choices for me. I also have another ARK ETF. This is the only other one that I own, and it's ARK-K, the ARK Innovation Fund. This is probably the OG ARK fund, and this one is a bit generic. No real theme here other than them looking for innovation companies. This is just me liking their management or how they manage their fund, which is why I put a bit of money here. I also own a cybersecurity ETF called Cyber. This is another industry that I think will do very well in the next 10-20 years, because as more and more things here online, cybersecurity will get very, very important. Similar to ARKG, I used to own individuals' names here. So CrowdStrike, Zscaler, Okta, these are all great companies, and I made a lot of money from CrowdStrike. But again, my realization moment was when I read something on Twitter and people asked, how will you know when CrowdStrike is beaten by a competitor? And my answer to that is that I will have no idea because I don't fully understand the product. For this reason, again, sold off my individual names, put it into ETFs. Finally, I also have 3 more thematic ETFs, ICLN for Global Clean Energy. Again, I think this one is, maybe I wouldn't say no-brainer, but it is something that us as a population, we're probably trending towards. Other than this, I have MSOS for US cannabis, and I have KWEB for Chinese tech. So KWEB is still a bit iffy for me. I of course already own a position through Stashaway, and the Chinese government seems to do whatever they want. So I'll continue monitoring this position, and again, even though I say this for the long term, I will have no qualms cutting out this ETF in the future. So these are the stocks and ETFs I currently believe in for the long term. Again, don't copy me just because I invest in. Instead, if you want to take this as an idea and start doing more research, then yeah, go for it. Like I said, I won't be afraid of making any changes along the way. As soon as something that maybe changes the fundamentals or my bull thesis, I wouldn't doubt, I wouldn't have a doubt cutting this out and adding in new names. Moving on to my secondary portfolio now, and I'll just call it my trading portfolio. This one should see a much higher turnover rate than my long-term portfolio. So I'll be going in and out of positions, and especially for this reason, I really hope that you guys don't buy any of these stocks just because it's here. As I mentioned though, I'll still only buy stocks that are fundamentally strong, but a key difference is I will only buy it when they are in a real uptrend and they have strong price momentum. However, I won't go into their earnings calls, I won't go into deep dives about their future potential. Like I said, I don't have time for this. I'll just do the very basic stuff like glancing over their revenue growth, profit growth on a quarterly basis. For this, price action will be the main indicator that I use to determine when to buy and sell positions. So I'm using my Webull account for this, no particular reason. I just wanted 2 different portfolios separated, and I have a whole list of stocks that I currently own, but I won't be going into it one by one. Some of the notable names I have in this portfolio is Snapchat, Unity, Fiverr, Palantir, and Airbnb. Again, these are great companies by their own right, but I just don't think that they're deserving of being in my long-term portfolio at the moment. Maybe one day, this is sort of like a pre-use sort of thing, right? If they perform really well, they continue to execute well, maybe they will graduate into my long-term portfolio. Other than this, I also have a big watch list of other stocks that I'm interested in, but just don't currently own because their price just isn't right yet. So some of the nice names I have here is stuff like Lemonade, Neo, Fastly, and Coinbase. When determining what to buy, I use pretty basic technical analysis like moving averages, support and resistance, and of course, volume. None of those fancy trend lines, RSI, Fibonacci indicators at the moment because I just don't think those fit me very well. Now, when I say that I'm buying it based on price, I'm not saying that I'm going to be buying it on the dip or at the very bottom. It's quite the opposite actually, because I will only buy these stocks if they're showing strong price movement, meaning they're actually breaking out and making all-time highs. For example, I'm going to show some charts for you guys just so you can take a look. So I recently bought a bit of Airbnb after it broke through some resistance on good volume, and the stock looks like it wants to make a move. So looking at this chart here again, you can see that for maybe 3, 4, 5 months, Airbnb was just moving sideways, up, down, up, down, up, down. So to me or to position traders, there's not much point in holding the stock at this time, but we want to hold it when it makes its next uptrend. Another example of this is Palantir. So again, if you look at the chart, it's been moving in a sideways range, up and down, up and down, up and down for a very long time. And I bought shares after it broke that first blue line on good volume. And yeah, I'll be continuing adding to my positions, assuming it continues to go up. The main difference with this portfolio though is that as soon as price action changes, I will be selling out of my position no matter how good the company is. A good example of this is probably Twitter. It's a good company and I like the progressiveness with crypto. However, it was in an uptrend last year. It's been a bit choppy up and down recently. And if I did own this stock, I would have sold when it broke down of the 50 simple moving average or the blue line. Now though, as it shows some signs of strength, when it broke past that blue line, the other blue line that I drew, I started another small position and I'll see what it does in the near future. If it continues to show some strong price momentum, that'll be adding to my position. So yeah, this is probably a bit complicated and some of you guys may not even understand why I'll be doing this. It's of course a lot much simpler to just hold a long-term portfolio. I'm just doing this for fun because, you know, I'm young, I can experiment, and I want to see if I can try and beat the markets while having a lot of stocks in my portfolio. It's too short of a time frame to know if I'm successful. I'll probably have to come back in 1 year time to let you guys know whether I made 1000% gains and have a new Lamborghini, or I'm going to start eating Maggie for the next few months. So that's a glimpse of how I manage my current US portfolios. Like I said, my trading portfolio is there to try and beat the market, while the long-term one is there just in case I fail. If you want to trade US stocks, then sign up with Interactive Brokers. It's an amazing broker. We also have a full review on it. I'll leave the link in the description below, so do check that out. Let us know down in the comments below, which portfolio would you rather have? Thanks for watching till the end, guys. Give us a 2 big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. See you guys in the next one. Peace out.